Parliament's Finance Portfolio Committee will today get an update from Audit Watchdog on the investigation into the conduct of KPMG and Deloitte. The Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors will be reporting to Parliament on the progress with its probe. Finance Committee Chairperson Yunus Karim said the meeting was scheduled before KPMG's sacking of its staff and withdrawing SARS report findings. Deloitte, meanwhile, is under scrutiny for its dealing with Treasury regarding the IFMS debacle. Let's now cross live to Parliament.
If we're going to go back to the role of the IRBA, it will put what we're doing into context. We protect the investing public through regulation and oversight. Now, our strength of our regulation must incite confidence in the market. And if there is strong regulation, then we will have confidence in our markets. And you would have read last week about our ranking by the World Economic Forum. Again, a very good example of when we are number one, it means that we have confidence in our financial markets. When we fall from number one, it means that confidence is lost in the financial markets. And that just means that we have to do a lot more to regain that confidence again. Now, a strong and effective regulator can enhance public perception and improve confidence because, remember, the World Economic Forum ranking is based on perceptions. And cooperation with other regulators will also assist in enhancing our effectiveness. Let me be more specific about the RBA's mandate to investigate. Our RBA's mandate to investigate alleged improper conduct of registered auditors arises from Section 41A of the Auditing Profession Act, Act number 26 of 2005, which states that the board must take steps to promote the integrity of the profession, including investigating improper conduct, conducting disciplinary hearings, and imposing sanctions for improper conduct. If I can just go back to the scope of our investigations and who we can cover, I should also mention that our scope includes investigation of auditors who audit public interest entities that fall within Section 4.3 of the Audit Act of the Auditor General. That means that it's the situation where the Auditor General contracts out work to private sector audit firms, and they also fall within our jurisdiction. So the board must take steps in terms of this section to promote the integrity of the profession, including investigating improper conduct, conducting disciplinary hearings, and imposing sanctions for improper conduct. Now again, the difference between our investigation and any other investigation, for example by the Institute, is that the outcome of the Institute's investigation will impact on the membership of those individuals. With the IRBA, it will impact on whether we can take away their license or whether they can continue to audit. So that is the difference between the possible outcomes of the investigation, depending on whether the auditors are guilty or not. Just a little bit on the investigations process to explain how the process is, and this might give you some indication of the length of time that could be involved. We start the investigations process when we receive a complaint, and these complaints can be received in one of three ways. First of all, we could get a complaint from a member of the public or from other regulators or the courts. The Inspections Committee of the IRBA can refer an auditor to our Investigations Department for further investigation, or it could be self-initiated, or what we refer to as mero motu cases. So when we see something in the press, for example, and we believe that there's also misconduct by the auditor, because the fact that there is irregularities at a client of an audit doesn't necessarily mean that there's been an audit failure. Once we can make a connection or there's complaints against the auditor, then we can start an investigation internally. The complaints are investigated if there's prima facie evidence of improper conduct by an RA, and as I've said there, not necessarily if there's complaints or there's anything in the news about what is happening at the client of the auditor. There has to be evidence or prima facie evidence that there's been improper conduct by the auditor. The investigating committee, which is an independent committee of the IRBA, then considers the evidence and makes recommendations on outcome of a matter to the Disciplinary Advisory Committee. This is not the Disciplinary Committee. This is a subcommittee of the board, and they will receive the recommendations from the Investigations Committee. And the Disciplinary Advisory Committee will then consider these recommendations from the Investigations Committee, and they will make a final decision on the matter. Now, that final decision can be one of three decisions. The matter, they could decide that the matter is not prosecuted, which means that the matter is dismissed. They could decide that the matter is prosecuted via a consent order. That means the auditor admits guilt and pays a fine. Or they can decide that the matter is referred for a disciplinary hearing to another committee, the Disciplinary Committee. An investigation can take, on average, 18 months, where you've got non-public interest cases, and in the last financial year, 87% of these cases were completed in 18 months, because the 18 months is a standard that we set ourselves, and in fact it's in our performance objectives, as we are a public entity, and in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, this is a standard that we measure ourselves and our success against. The international benchmark for the duration of investigations is 36 months for public interest cases. And at the same time, it's important to highlight that we have to adhere to the Promotion of Administration of Justice Act, which means that all parties must have a fair opportunity to defend themselves and to put their case forward. Now, if I can move on to the disciplinary process. This process will start by us briefing the instructing attorneys. Once a decision has been made that it will go to disciplinary hearing, there will be pre-trial preparation with investigators, witnesses, attorneys. The hearing arrangements are set up. The respondent is served with a charge sheet by the sheriff of the court. The respondent is required to plead to the charges. Evidence bundle is prepared and issued, and we must then convene a hearing of the disciplinary committee. Trevor, I can then focus on the two matters that you wanted me to give feedback on specifically, the status of the African Bank investigation and the status of the Linkway trading investigation. The African Bank investigation, we opened the matter in December 2014, and that was initiated internally. There were no complaints at that stage. We had enough information to link possible misconduct and to the auditor, and therefore we opened an investigation internally at the RBA. In May 2016, after we opened the investigation, we obviously proceeded with the investigation. But in May 2016, the IRBA Commission report was released, and we believed at that point that there will be corroborating evidence in the Myburg report that would support the RBA's investigation, and therefore we waited for that report to be issued and clearly referred to that report when we continued with our investigation. By June 2016, we then extended our investigation to incorporate the findings in the Myburg report. In December of that year, draft allegations were tabled at the investigating committee and approved for issuing to the respondent, and they were given till June 2017 to respond. Now, without going into the detail of the extent of the papers that were involved, the Myburg report alone was over 800 pages. We believe that it was important that we provide the auditor with sufficient time to respond to all these allegations, and the charge sheet was also quite lengthy. In October 2017, this month, we will table at our investigation committee the recommendation to DAC, and of course that recommendation will only be made at the investigation committee. So this month, the investigation committee will make one of three recommendations to the disciplinary advisory committee, which will be to dismiss, to enter into a consent order, or to take it to a disciplinary hearing. On the status of the KPMG investigation, again, it was an investigation opened internally on the 30th of June 2017, and at the same time we issued the investigating letters to the respondents. On the 28th of July 2017, we received our initial response from the respondents, and what we're busy with at the moment is reviewing responses and initiating follow-up requests for additional evidence and for additional information. So the investigation is currently underway. On the 27th of September, we met with the KPMG International Chairman-elect at the time. He became chairman on the 1st of October, Bill Thomas, and the new CEO of the local KPMG office, Shlomo Dlomo, to discuss with them the process of investigation and the fact that we needed them to cooperate with the IRBA. On 28 September, on the 27th of September, we also had a special board meeting at the IRBA so that the board could instruct the Secretariat on the process forward and discuss the KPMG matter, any possible risks in the market, and what our process should be as the IRBA. After the board meeting, we issued another letter to the CEO of KPMG to remind them of the importance of submitting their information for the investigation timeously, and also gave them a list of the information that we still required. Now, what we are doing at the moment, and this is all decisions resulting from the board meeting, and after they've had a thorough discussion on the current investigation and where it should be going, the board instructed that we have to fast-track this particular investigation, and I'm talking now about KPMG because the African Bank will already be in front of the Investigations Committee this month. So we will fast-track the investigation, but we have to respect the prescribed process of the Auditing Profession Act and the disciplinary rules, and of course bear in mind the requirements of the Promotion of Administration of Justice Act. We must also continue to manage the risk of the loss in confidence in the profession. And what we've done in that regard, for example, is if we want to restore that confidence, it's important that we do take appropriate regulatory action against the auditors if it's necessary. It's important that we do get to the right outcome in the investigation. And it's important that we also continuously engage with other bodies. We have been, since we started the investigation, engaged with other international regulators who has a keen interest in the outcome of the KPMG matter in South Africa, because it has now become an international matter, and they have an interest because a lot of the clients of KPMG in South Africa might have branches or companies in other jurisdictions which fall under the regulation of other regulators. We also will continue to enforce cooperation with the IRBA, and if there is no cooperation from the firms, then we will take appropriate action against that audit firm, because it is important that we bring these cases to a close. And therefore, we have got provisions in our legislation that provides us with the power to take action if there is non-cooperation from the clients. These two cases are not very different from other high-profile cases that we're investigating, and we do have a lot of these cases going on at the same time, and we expect the same level of cooperation from the firms and from the auditors when it comes to the current cases. We are focusing our capacity on these high-profile cases at the moment, and we have had support offered from the international regulators to say that should we need capacity, they will assist. But at the moment, we have used our internal capacity to reallocate our resources to these cases. We also met with the Institute of Chartered Accountants to ensure that we understand exactly what their scope is of their investigation, to ensure that we don't duplicate, and to ensure that no confusion is caused in the market, because we need to be careful when it comes to the outcomes of different investigations. And if there's any different outcome, then it might confuse the public. So it's important that we continue to engage with them on what it is that they're doing, or any other investigations, or what their scope is, because we need to ensure that we don't duplicate our efforts. So we have met with SAICA's leadership on Saturday and discussed on our way forward and how we will cooperate with each other, and we will continue to have those meetings during these investigations. I will stop there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mania, Mr. Lees, Floyd. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think we're all aware that KPMG International claims in their statement that they identified no evidence of illegal behavior or corruption on the part of KPMG partners or staff. Now, we simply do not believe that that statement is credible, precisely because the investigation was conducted evidently by KPMG International, and they are therefore conflicted. That is why we asked for these hearings, so that we could satisfy ourselves that the regulator is conducting an investigation. So thank you for your report. My first question is, in your statement you said that you had interacted with KPMG International and KPMG South Africa, and at some point you had to revert back to them to remind them to submit documents or evidence timeously. That suggests to me that KPMG South Africa are not cooperating or not sufficiently cooperating with your investigation. Is that a correct inference from your statement? So that's the first question. The second question deals with the scope. Now, in your statement on the 30th of June 2017, where you announced that IRBA would conduct an investigation, it appeared to me that the scope of that investigation was limited to the whole question of the audit of Linkway trading, which was central to the so-called Dubai laundromat. But I want to be clear, does the scope of your investigation extend to the controversy surrounding the forensic report into the so-called SARS rogue unit? That's the second question. The third question is, and I'm delighted to hear